Hello, welcome back to the channel. From our last discussion, we were going to discuss Egypt 7000 BC when we noticed this red, and it seems to stipulate that this is the Yoruba DNA that is part of the modern populations in the Levant. I did not know what this element was, whether it was slavery or not, because of this report at some point did discuss the possibility of slavery. Not sure if it was discussing this particular portion of the DNA from the Yoruba or the E1B1A population. I did uncover some things. There is a document that demonstrates that 2,000 years ago, Palestinians received gene flow from sub-Saharan Africa to the Middle East post the Christian era, which means integration is what I would think first. But then I saw this particular document, and it says researchers found that modern day Jews can attribute about 3 to 5% of their ancestry to sub-Saharan Africans, and that the exchange of genes between Jews and sub-Saharan Africans occurred approximately 72 generations, or about 2,000 years ago. It's talking about the same incident. But notice one says exchange and the other ones say received gene flow from sub-Saharan African to the Middle East. And it is these type of reporting that can leave a question mark as to whether or not either one is true. Also, we already know that the Natufian also provided or are the hereditary parts of Palestinians. In other words, they were in the Levant or in Canaan before other groups came to the Levant or Canaan, and these mixtures integrated with the Palestinians. This quote says Palestinians are partially descended from Natufian ancestors. That's puzzling because either you descend from them or you don't. And here it says they partially descend. So let's take out the word partially because that really doesn't apply. But that they were in Canaan and received gene flow from migrations outside of Canaan, or that were located in different parts of Canaan. So now we do know that in essence, this particular mixture or baseline is not slavery. That's the most important thing. And also, whether it's from the Yoruba, this document speaks of E-M78, and E-M78 does have mixture pertains to North Africa, Senegal, Ethiopia, the Near East, and Senegal does represent the Mandinga or Mendes population. While looking at this chart, we can also see EM35, asterisk meaning other subclass, and see the gray areas that also represent Senegal. And here it shows mixture with North Africa and Senegal, which are the Mandinga. EM2, which is E1B1A. This is mixture, probably the Yoruba here, where this particular scientist or research team tested taphalite individual. These were EM78 people that is located in this particular cave in North Africa. And these individuals there were said to have sub-Saharan African ancestry. And they observed positive values for all sub-Saharan Africans in this particular mixture. And scrolling down, we can see that the taphalite individuals are said to have Natufian ancestry, and I believe it refers to it as 63.5% Natufian and 36.5 sub-Saharan African ancestry on average. And it consistently finds that a mixture of Natufian and Yoruba reasonably fits the taphalite gene pool. They suggest that there is no evidence of gene flow from Paleolithic Europeans into taphalite. So, in essence, these individuals are just characterized as having African ancestry and Natufian ancestry, and this particular African-related ancestry is due to the Yoruba, Mendes, and Natufian populations. Geometrically, it's related to two deeply divergent outgroups around 2000 before the present time in ancient South Africa. And mtDNA is 0D and related to the San and Mbuti pygmy. These people are closely related to each other rather than Yoruba or the Natufian, and that this is a two-way admixture model. So, in other words, you can sum it up by saying that the EM78 group that is in North Africa has both the Natufian and the Yoruba Mendes ancestry. I thought that was interesting to note. Also, so they believe that the Natufian back migrated to North Africa, and they were the norm in that area for 6,000 years or so until the group EM78 began to take form with migrations to either East Africa or some parts of Africa other than North Africa, where some believe it was strictly where they met and integrated. It's hard to say about the E1B1A ancestry because they also say that the Natufian ancestry or ancestors did not have any E1B1A ancestry. So I wanted to mention that how E-M78 have ancestry that is related to the ancestors or the Natufians, or it could be the Natufians. And the E1B1A ancestry that they refer to as the Yoruba or Mende could be because of migrations to North Africa, or the Natufian did go into East Africa, but there is no sign of that from what I've seen. And yet, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that there is no explanation at this point on how the admixture came about. Sub-Saharan or East Africa, or what they consider as the Levant. We can look at EM2 again and see the gray areas that represent Senegal or E1B1A population. And look at EM81. It is clearly North African descent. EM123, the Natufian haplogroup, and this has the Near East component and Europe and Ethiopia components. And we've seen EM38, and it has gone in so many locations. I also wanted to explain this particular portion of the chart, and this is regarding relative posterior probability, and that on this chart it lists the Yoruba as the group that is relative here to this modern population area. I wanted to not deny this or not in agreement with this, but to just also other E1B1A populations can also be related to the Yoruba component. And here, cluster 1921 within EM2, I believe I got the information from Family Tree, but definitely look into it. So this was identified, and African Americans are at 50 to 55% of this cluster. Also, it is identified as E1B1A7. And this particular scientist or researcher determined that African Americans were at 40%. Over here, relative was E2, and 4 representatives from Angola was positive. Angola, Cameroon, Gabon, Tanzania, and Uganda. The posterior probability that was in A was Madinka, the Mandi, which are E1B1A, and the Yoruba, E1B1A7A, and E1B1A8 was in A. Here, under this cluster, 1919, as I said, is also E1B1A8, and the African Americans are at 40%. This particular haplogroup is distributed across all of sub-Saharan Africa at a lower frequency. Not that they are 40% at this particular sample, the sample amount at 40%, but that they are distributed. Wanted to just show you that and say finally, this was resolved. And I was happy to see that it was not slavery. And that in the modern populations, you have a lot of mixture for these groups. Not just E1B1A or E1B1B, here referred to as the Natufiant and the Levant North. I thought I would just highlight some of the groups. Scroll down to let you see some of the groups. I'm not familiar with the group names, but this is Gabon. This is the population. Gabon again. The population called Sheikh. Some are given a value and some are not, because some of these people are not E1B1A78 or 8 or E1B1A that's positive. They are also other haplogroups. I was surprised to see that the Maasai in Kenya, which are Nilotic, but they did not bring forth a value. Here are the Madinka from Senegal. On this particular chart, it also have an NA value. I don't know why the NA. Okay, I was going to scroll down to the Yoruba, but I missed them.